Bankai. Hakka no Togame.
Hello there, great person, and welcome back to my Bleach content. Today we will deal with something new. Last time we delved into Shutara's Bankai, analyzed it, and tried to contextualize it with some mythology. Today we're doing something different. Today we will take a look at Rukia's Zanpakuto Sode no Shirayuki, and we will see what physics actually says about what she does, especially with the powers she got in Thousand-Year Blood War, which were new powers, of course, or recontextualized powers of Zanpakuto. And I just want to dive into it, explain some of the physics behind it, because I'm a physicist and in part quantum physicist. And we will also delve a bit into quantum physics today, but do not fret, we will not use any formula, so there will not be a single formula in this video, don't be afraid. We will use good old explanations without mathematics. And I hope you enjoyed this a bit. Also make sure to like and subscribe if you like this video, and share it around, because it's been pretty difficult to create due to my children now being here, and I have to take care of them, of course. So my wife is kindly giving me some time to still record some videos, but yeah, that's why also the content is a bit dry. But that's that about the introduction. Let's just get into this and have some fun with analyzing Rukia Kuchiki's powers and what physics would say about them. And this is basically a video dealing with the science of Bleach. I will do more like this. Next up will be, I don't know when though, but next up will be S-Nerd and learning psychology with S-Nerd. I'm gonna delve into his fear stuff a bit and give you some psychological and neurological backgrounds, perhaps, in a fun way, the way I plan it here today. And just tell me if you like this kind of content. If you want more, of course, I will then do more. But yeah, also don't forget to share this, because, as I said, it's been quite some work to structure and put up. But anyway, I hope you enjoy it, and take care of yourself. So first, we will start with Rukia's Zanpakuto itself. So in the sealed state, it's just a normal katana. The guard is like a circle. It looks a bit like a snowflake, but all in all, it's a normal sword. She releases her Zanpakuto into Shikai with the command dance, or mai in Japanese, Sode no Shirayuki, and then the sword turns white and gets a ribbon at the hilt, a very long ribbon. And that is also in the name, because Sode no Shirayuki means ribbon of white snow. Sode means ribbon, no is the genitive, and Shirayuki is, of course, white snow. So we have a very, very beautiful Zanpakuto at hand, and it is described as the most beautiful Zanpakuto. We all know it, and it really is. And as we see here in the Bankai state later on, it's even more beautiful. I will talk a bit about how that connects perhaps a bit to Rukia herself, but let's not dive into that now. Important to note is that the Shikai state is not only her blade, as we thought for a long time, but it is also the ribbon of the blade, which is very important, and it is also Rukia's body herself. So her Shikai already transforms herself a bit, even though the transformation is not visible outwardly. So the core ability of Sode no Shirayuki, it was very, very long thought to be snow manipulation. Like when it was first shown against Leroy, we thought it was a snow type Zanpakuto, because like she did the first dance, or the second dance, she put like her sword into the ground in one of the fights against the Aranka, and the snow wave came, and she did the first dance and froze Leroy solid with the ice pillar, and we just thought, okay, it's another ice type Zanpakuto, snow type Zanpakuto, and it's very beautiful, and that's all it can do. And as it turns out, the Zanpakuto is not a snow type Zanpakuto, and it is not a ice type Zanpakuto per se. The Zanpakuto's ability is actually a bit more abstract, though that makes it a lot more powerful. And a true ability was first revealed, of course, in Rukia's fight against S-Nerd. and Esnerd was attacking her with his fear thorns. We will get into that in another video, but Rukia basically activates her true Shikai and fights Esnerd with it. So the question is, what is her true Shikai? Her true Shikai power is control of heat, or a better, like pushing heat away from places. I think that's the best way to sum it up. And we will now get a bit into the physics parts here already, because first we have to understand what heat even is. And I will try to explain what heat is very easily here. And I hope you will follow along. But before we get into that, there is a very, 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 very important thing I want to talk about. And basically, if you're learning physics or science in any way, this is probably the most crucial thing to understand. We often think of formula of mathematics when we think about physics, but that's not what physics is. Like, yes, we use mathematics in physics, but it's only because we measure stuff, so we need numbers and we need to relate numbers. But that's not what physics is. You can basically think about physics as thinking about stories. I think that's probably a very out there statement by me, but I will try to make it a bit clearer to you in this video. And if you understand that, you probably will have an easier way of understanding physics itself, at least I hope. So first, we will get into what I mean with that. So what I mean with that is physics basically describes workings of the world. And I think you already know that. So we want to describe workings of the world. How do we describe workings of the world when we don't know what the things we describe are? How they look like, how they perhaps behave? Like, we don't know anything in the beginning when we start applying physics. And the same is true for heat as well. Like, we didn't know what it was. So what did we do? We basically tried to figure out what is a way of describing it that works. And to do that, we will just use a little story. We will use a story about a dance. And you are wondering probably what is he talking about, but I will illustrate it with some great chappy drawings I did on paint, because I can't afford a tablet. So you will have to live with these paint drawings of chappy. So let's imagine there are many chappies. They're on a dance. Some are holding hands, doing a partner dance. Music's pretty loud, and all are dancing to the rhythm. So everything moves around, and basically that's the story. It's a very small story. It's just a story about chappy or chappies having fun at a dance, and we will try to figure out what this means in relation to temperature. So first, what is the music? The music, of course, here stands for the temperature. The louder the music, the higher the temperature, the more chappy moves to the beat, the more the chappies dance, and the lower the music volume, the less they get bored, they are like very sluggish, and they don't feel the beat, they don't move around a lot, and that is basically how temperature works in a very, very easy way. What do the things in this story mean? So the chappies, of course, stand for atoms. And you can imagine a single chappy as a single atom, like perhaps an helium or xenon, like all the noble gases. I had to look up the word noble gas, I'm sorry. Anyway, so those are the chappies that are dancing around alone. They don't want a partner. There are some chappies that have partners, of course, as I said before. And those are molecules, so the chappy molecules that, that have partners are dancing with the partners, so it's atoms bonded, so to speak, and they move to the beat. What does that mean in reality? So when we describe temperature, we mostly imagine some form of element or a composition of elements, like a gas or a solid or something, which is comprised of many atoms, so the chappies, and depending on the temperature, there is movement. Or, as the physicist would say, they have kinetic energy. So the more you move, the more kinetic energy you have. And there are basically two types of movement here. There is the type that they all do, like they all move around. So it's like atoms would be like moving around a bit because they are energetic. And the more temperature, the more they move around. And the chappies that hold hands, of course, as molecules, like molecules vibrate as well. The more temperature there is, the more they vibrate. And that's basically how temperature works. So the higher the temperature, the more movement on the atomic and molecular level. You have to always keep in mind with these things. Like this story I just told was very simple. You can, of course, make a more complicated story. You could probably even write a novel about this chappy dance and make it very complicated, nuanced, and intricate. That would be in physics refining this model a lot more. For example, we use single chappies mostly when we talk about temperature, like we as physicists imagine, if we imagine chappies, single chappies. But if you want to be a bit more elaborate, you can use several chappies holding hands. That's already a bit more elaborate of a story, you know? And the more elaborate your story is, the better you can describe reality, but the more complicated it gets as well, and the more connections there are between elements of the story. And basically, that's what physics does all the time. And the stories in physics are called models, like in all of science. Like, so we basically model things and we try to make it fit. And if it doesn't fit, we add stuff to the model. Like we would add chappies holding hands. I hope the point gets across a bit. We will get back to this, so don't worry if you have not understood it completely. But basically, Rukia can make all the chappies stand still because she can turn off the music. So her Zanpakuto's ability is basically turning off the music for chappies in a certain area. And what is that area? That is the big question. So the area that Rukia can turn off, like can pull the heat out of, is firstly her body. And she says that against her fight against Esnert as well. She says, I stop the molecules all in my body. And with herself, she means that her molecules are not moving, and so to speak, there is no life anymore in her, no movement in her. And she basically uses her spirit energy to move the atoms around, but the atoms itself, like they're not moving anymore, so the temperature is 0. And the Shikai's ability actually not only encompasses her body itself, but also her sword. So her sword is part of her Shikai, of course, and the ribbon is also part of her Shikai. So her sword and ribbon probably, it's not completely in the source material, but heavily implied, they cool down to absolute 0 as well, giving her the ability to control the, or like pull heat out of certain areas, her body and her sword ribbon. That's basically the core power of her Zanpakuto. And we will now look at her techniques and see how that applies to it and how it fits with her Zanpakuto, because these techniques we thought were snow techniques actually can all be linked back to this single ability of pulling heat out of an area. And basically all of her Shikai abilities are extensions of the area beyond her body, save for one. And I will get into that. So first, the cooling down process, because I really, really like this. In this section, we find out some physics as well, because Rukia explains 2 or 3, I think it's 3 basic things about temperature. So first, she explains minus 18 degrees, blood freezes, which I think is just accurate. So what does that mean? Yeah, the chappies get so slow that they are frozen. The blood chappies. So the blood chappies is yeah, so the blood chappies, they huddle together a bit more as they dance and start to hold hands as well and touch each other more, like when they dance, and crash into each other a bit more. That would be the story about that, about the blood chappies. So, but this is pretty basic stuff. I think you probably all know that from school. What is freezing? Well, liquids or gaseous substances turn solid. That's basically it. And that's what happens to blood at minus 18 degree. Though some claim it's minus 6, but whatever. It's like somewhere around minus 10. So then she goes on and she says, yes, minus 50 degree. Now my feet touch the ground, freeze it, and create ice quakes. What is an ice quake? And I actually did not know this, though the explanation is like you can probably derive that on your own from her core ability again. So what she does is her feet touch the ground. Her feet are minus 50 degrees. and the sucking out of the heat she does with her her feet with her ability extends into the ground. So she like pushes away the heat out of the ground beneath her. And what is in the ground? Apparently, the ground of the Wandenreich, where they are, has water in it. So the water in the ground freezes, but because water has this special thing called the anomaly of water, which is a property only water has, and it is that there is a certain temperature, 4 degrees Celsius about, where water has the densest state. And if it cools down, it expands again. Like ice expands the more you cool it down. So the ice expands into the ground and puts pressure into the ground. And one moment, the pressure of the ice extending in the ground becomes so high that it like ruptures the ground, creating ice quakes in the ground. So it's basically through her pushing away of the heat from the ground beneath her, she extends the water into ice, and the ice grows and makes the ground rupture because of the pressure the ice is under. So I found that pretty cool. And of course, the last one is, she says, now minus 273.15 degrees Celsius, absolute zero. All molecules stop moving. So the music's out, the chappies don't dance anymore, just standing around sad, no energy anymore. And this is basically, from classical physics, the state like of complete loss of kinetic energy of the molecules or the chappies. And what I thought was very, very interesting, and this is a point very, very important to me, because there is something here. The story doesn't work anymore because the chappies are said to stand still on the dancing floor. Like, that's fine. We can tell that story. But in reality, that's not what happens. Because in reality, no matter whether there's music or not, in reality, the chappies, we figured that out. The chappies still move a bit. They're always moving. They can never stand still. And that is something that quantum physics tells us, actually. So when we discovered quantum physics, we put this part into the story, so to speak. So we have the dancing floor of chappies, and they stop when the music stops, but no one never, ever really stops. And that is told by quantum physics, incorporated into the model by quantum physics, so to speak. So the chappies still move a bit. Like it's you can, if you go a bit more into it, it's the uncertainty principle, because nothing can ever be still. Because there cannot be a momentum of zero, because that would mean it would be the thing that has the momentum of zero is everywhere. So it doesn't work. Like, the world breaks when that happens. So basically, quantum physics tells us, hey man, the story you told about the dance floor, it was pretty cool, worked pretty well, but man, if the music stops, no. They don't completely stop. They all move a bit, twitch their eye, there's still something left. So that is quantum physics. And actually, if particles are in this state of minus 273.15 degrees Celsius, they form a new phase. So we have the phases of fluids, gases, solids. You might know plasma as well, which is when it's very hot, like everything just mixes around, like every chappie is just running wild through each other because the music's so loud. There's no place anymore. They just run around in the room. That's plasma in the story of Chappie. Anyway, so this phase they are in when they are so cold, when the chappies just twitch a bit, that is called, it's a quantum phase. So it's either a Bose-Einstein condensate or it's a Fermi condensate, something like that, or a mix of that. But I just wanted to put it in here because it will be important a bit later. You might not believe it, but Cooper thought of this. He did. I don't know if he did, but it fits perfectly into the way the fight is written. So anyway, so that is her cooling down process. So she has got absolute zero. But she doesn't understand quantum physics here. She doesn't understand that there are quantum effects that will affect her later on. And we will go into them a bit later. But now we will look at the dances. How does this pushing away of heat, erasing heat from an area, translate to her dances? So first off, of all the dances are, of course, something very pristine. So a dance is basically you move through space, and because her ability is an area of coldness, with her moving, this area expands a bit, and she can create forms of the heatless areas, so to speak, with her body flowing through space. It's a bit poetic, but I hope you get a bit what it means. And it also fits her pristine personality, because one part of Rukia is very, very noble, and she tries to be very noble and honorable, and like this dance flowing thing really fits her character. But also the coldness fits her character a lot, because she can be very cold and ruthless in battle, like when she slays D-Roy, when she slays Ara and Yero in the end. Brilliant stuff. So the coldness and calculatedness really fits her, mixed together with this pristineness she has. So the dances together with the coldness are a perfect Zanpakuto for her. As Kubo always does, he tries to put character traits into the abilities. I talked about that before. But now we get to the first dance. Somenomai Tsukishiro. Basically, what Rukia does is the ribbon, it spins around her, she turns around, the ribbon forms a circle, and in that circle, she now has the ability to suck the heat out of the area in that circle. And the circle, so there's this disc-shaped area where the heat is sucked out of, but the disc goes up and down, so forming this pillar. So basically, she super cools like a giant pillar of air above the Zanpakuto's ribbon. And basically, the ice we see is not ice from water, but perhaps a bit from the water of the air, but also probably frozen oxygen and nitrogen and really, really, really cold stuff. At least if it's refined. Like, it could be that in the earlier arcs, it wasn't minus 273.15 degrees Celsius. It was a bit more because she couldn't control it completely. So it might have not been that cold. But yeah, if she's at full power in Shikai, her first dance would probably completely freeze every molecule in this pillar, completely solid, like suck the heat out of that area, of the cylindric area, which links perfectly to this area of heat reduction she has. So I think that's a very, very cool thing to link it back, and to also incorporate the ribbon into her Shikai, that the ribbon also is an extension of her body, so to speak, and it also can create areas of a temperature erasure. Tsuginomai Hakuren. This one was so cool. I was like, wow, this fits perfectly with this new Shikai ability. So what does she do here? She puts her sword into the ground, steps 4 spaces in front of her, 4 spots. The spots start to emit this mist, and then she puts her sword forward, and a giant blast of what appears to be snow extends forward. We thought it was just snow coming forward, but it is not. Now that we know her true ability, at least in her true Shikai, the ability would work probably like this. So she puts her sword into the ground, and with that, the ground becomes part of the area she sucks heat out of, and we can see that by the air condensing out of it, so it's not snow, perhaps in part, but it's also like the air above this little spot, like just cooling and condensating from a gas to a solid, and we see it in the air. And then she points her sword forward and extends her sword forward and uses the cold area that is like bleeding up a bit to extend it forward to like have this cooling, this heat erasure spurred forward, pierce into the enemy and do a lot of damage. And again, in the earlier Shikai, we saw, like against Grimjo, she couldn't cool it down probably till complete 0. So she, like, it was more like some snow came because some water condensated, but it wasn't like the solid, like what would it be? An arrow or pillar that shot forward. It's not that, like, because she wasn't probably strong enough, I guess. But I really like it. It's so much attention to detail, like the putting the sword in the ground to create these areas of no heat, and she uses those then to like extend her sword forward. It's so brilliant. And we just thought it was, yeah, some cool move to put snow up. but it's so much more intricate when we apply her Tsurushika abilities here, because it's just so genius, like cooling these spots, like then they become part of her body or sword for a moment, and extending like this the area in front of her, and then she expands it. Or perhaps she even like pushes the coldness like forward like a bit and doesn't completely erase the heat, but it's just the cold molecules she created, she pushes them forward. That could also be, because I think the complete suction of heat away from an area is her Bankai in the end, but we will get to that. So that's her second dance. Yeah, Someno Mai Shirafune. This one is so good. Like it blew my mind when I rewatched it. It was so awesome. It was so brilliant. Like the detail, like with what we know now, it makes so much sense. So she has the sword and it's broken, and she holds it in front of Araniero. And what does she do? So the space her sword blade would have been is still her Shikai. Like this area still exists. It just doesn't have metal anymore, but it's still the area that belongs to her. So she just puts the area into his head, so to speak. And then she says, she does her Shikai, and the area where her sword would have been just freezes solid. So the ice we see again piercing Araniero is probably just frozen oxygen and nitrogen, because the area just completely freezes, erases all heat in the place where her blade would have been, killing Araniero instantly, almost instantly. And we see that some ice forms out of the impact where her sword like appears, implying that like this cold area cools some area in his head, in Araniero's head as well. I loved that. Like, it was so good. And with the ability being her body, sword, and ribbon, it makes so much sense that this exists. Like, basically, if her sword is destroyed, it doesn't matter. Her sword isn't the blade anymore. It's the area of the blade. It's so brilliant. I love it. Yeah. All in all, I have to say, when I looked back at her techniques and dances and looking at them in the context of her new Shikai, it was so good, because it makes so much sense, and I think we now know pretty well how they work. Like, it's not just some flashy magic moves, it's just this one core of erasing heat, and that is what drives everything about her, and it is so well done. And when you look back, it still is there. Always. Every technique she used with her sword is always the heat erasure, and it can always be traced back to that. So I don't even think it's a retcon in a way. It is just, and he might have always thought of it like this. And we just see the snow because it might not have been as powerful as it is in Thousand Year Blood War, or it might not have been as cold, but basically this heat erasure stuff is still already there. And we can best see it, I think, when we look at the condensation vapor that comes out of Second Dance. Like, that's the best indicator. I love that detail. It's so good. Like, I get the feeling he knew some physics there. Don't know if he did. Perhaps he just was very intuitive there. But man, I love this Shikai design so much. So there is a weakness, of course, of her Shikai, which Esnod brilliantly takes advantage of. And I love this. Like, I couldn't believe it when I thought about it again. Like, it was so brilliant. And we have to go back to the Chappie dance now. So basically, Rukia's body is in Chappie mode. Is a Chappie dance without music, so Chappie's twitch a bit. She doesn't know that because she doesn't know quantum physics. What happens at very, very low temperatures to electric conductivity? Well, there is this thing called supraconductivity. And it basically says if things are at absolute zero, some of them get no resistance. Like, the resistance disappears from, so electrical signals can travel through some wire or whatever instantaneously, almost, like very quickly. So you can imagine it like this. And again, I will tell you the story of conductivity now, because I want to illustrate a bit what I mean with these stories in physics. So I'll tell you another story. So let's say there's Chappie, and Chappie in the distance sees the seaweed ambassador, and she's like, "Wow, I like him. He's my great seaweed ambassador. I need to get to him." And Yeah, so she runs to him, but when you run to someone, there's always something in the way. Might be a bog, might be a wall, might be just air, but there's always something in between, and you have to go through something, and it's like this resistance stuff that like something always stops you from running really fast to the person. Um, so this is basically Ohm's law. I just explained Ohm's law to you with Chappie. So the story of Ohm's law is the one I just told you. And basically what it means is that the more Chappie loves the sea or wants to be with Seaweed Ambassador, the more she tries to go there, the quicker she is. That is probably like the love here is the voltage, and how quick she goes is the current, and the resistance is what is in between. So you get hopefully what I mean with the story. Like that's the story. You could put it into a formula and calculate it. You don't need to understand what Ohm's law is. You just need the story. You just need to understand the story and how the aspects work. And now the cool thing comes in. So if we are at absolute zero, every resistance between Chappie and the Seaweed Ambassador disappears. So Chappie can go at maximum speed to the Seaweed Ambassador, like boom, and there she is. And that is exactly what happens to Rukia's nerves when she is in Shikai, because her nerves become super conductive, which is actually a thing. Like your nerve would do that. So she weakened herself to the images of fear that Asnod's presence instills in her. So when Asnod goes like, ha ha ha, I can still instill fear into your optic nerve, it is so brilliant because she's super conductive right now and she's just like getting it all like hammered into her, and like she snaps completely, and it's so sensible because yes, that is what would happen. Like all of your senses would probably be heightened. Like they wouldn't because you would be dead, because you would be frozen, but because she has the ability to still be alive, like everything, like every sensory input like just hammers into her brain. And like that is why his fear overwhelms her so terribly. And I love that. I love that so much. He probably didn't know this. Can't tell me he knew this, but it's so brilliant how it works. Like the Shikai's weakness is not only her like splintering apart, but also her heightened senses because of the superconductivity her body is in when she's still in true Shikai, or when the Shikai is still a bit there. It's so brilliant. I love this. So that was the Shikai discussion. I hope you enjoyed this. So the physics part is mainly over now. I hope you enjoyed the stories a bit. Tell me if they made sense, or if I need to be more clear next time. But this was very important for me to teach you, because again, this is the most important part. In physics, you try to tell stories about the world, and if the stories work well enough to predict stuff, for example, or describe stuff, they are good stories. And if they don't, if there are cracks in the story, you have to fill them with additional elements. Like then it's a better story. And in physics, we would say you have refined your model. That means also, very important as well, the story you tell is never complete. You can always expand on it. You can always add details to it. You can like take the stories and put them into novels. And in physics, that's refining the models. Like you always try to tell a better story to approach reality. You will never get there. Like you try to be better and better and better to encapsulate it. And in physics, we would say we create better models and theories to approach reality, to make it all fit and to incorporate all little things that might annoy us and that we can't describe. We put it all in, and through that the formula get longer and longer and longer, but they describe stuff better. So I just want to make that clear again, and I hope you understood what I meant. So basically, if you think about physics and want to learn physics and there's a formula, don't look at the mathematics. Look at what the formula tells you. What is the story behind the formula? Like the formula of Ohm's law, I will not put it on the screen, I promised you. Perhaps you know it, but I described it in the story of Chappie wanting to go to a Seaweed Ambassador, having some problems with stuff between them. That is the story of Ohm's law. The story doesn't always work. Ohm's law doesn't work, for example, for quantum physics, as we saw, because in quantum physics, resistance disappears. Or when the temperature changes, it doesn't work as well. We would have to incorporate that sometimes Chappie might be sweating more and have a harder time to go there when it's hotter, and then the resistance, so to speak, changes. That can be, but that's not Ohm's law anymore. That's another story. it's a better model. You know, that's, I hope you get the idea here. So every time you look at a formula or a model or an image, try to tell a story about it. And if you understood the story, you can find the cracks and learn more if you try to fill them. And you can hopefully apply it. And the mathematics is just to put the stories into numbers. It's just another language. Like every formula is a story very, very condensed to single mathematical relations, but the story is still there. And actually, I did a lot of research on this because I research physics learning and especially quantum physics learning. And very often people have problems because they only see the mathematics and they think physics is mathematics. It's not. And they can only think in mathematics, and they are very good at mathematics, but they don't know what they're doing because they don't know the story. You need to know the story. And the formula comes later. You can try to put the story into the formula. You know, then you have understood it. If you can just write down the mathematics, you have understood nothing. You can calculate stuff, but you don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, now we will go into the Bankai Hakka no Togame. Hello, you. This is a shameless self-advertisement. Do you like horror? It's October, so you probably do like horror. And you're watching a video about Rukia, who fought Asnerd, who is the fear, who is basically horror as well. So if you do like horror, please check out my horror story collection. It's probably basically my first horror novel. You can listen to it for free on Vidith's channel and just tell me what you thought about it. If you like it, share it around and support me with that a bit. And I hope you enjoy that. Just go into the pinned comment, click on the link, and listen to very, very spooky, effed up, disturbing stories. Advertisement over. Let's enjoy the video.
Bankai. Hakka no Togame.
Yeah, it's one of my absolute favorite moments in the second core. Like, I think I even cried in the reaction. It was so good. We've waited so long to see this animated. And I just love Rukia's Bankai. What does it do? So she puts forward the sword, I think in this stance, a bit like Tsuginomai. And she says, Bankai Hakka no Togame, and what does happen? So in her Bankai state, her clothes get like this, white, pristine, her beautiful, pristine personality, her kindness, and her emotional nature, and all these positive effects, so to speak, bleed into her icy, cold, calculating nature and complete it, and she becomes whole, serene, a snow queen. And you see that in her hair, like she's just this pristine being. And yes, she has this ability of destroying everything with pushing away heat in an area, but she accepts herself as who she is in a way, and she sees herself as beautiful finally as well. At least that's how I see it, because before she also has self-doubts, wants to live up to her brother and all the stuff. And here she finally, when she gets acceptance from her brother, she realizes what a beautiful person she is, and that she's powerful, and that she's pristine. And the dances, form like this concept of dance is accentuated by her Bankai, appearance. And she's just a princess now. She has accepted herself in a way, and she releases this giant heat erasure wave. So the wave extends in two ways. Like, it extends forwards from her sword, and we see this as the mist, like, being pushed forward, which is basically the area is being, like, the heat is pushed out of the area, and at the border of this heat erasure area that, like, pushes forward, like, everything condenses into mist, like the air becomes solid, and through that process you see this mist extending, which is basically just the temperature erasure shooting forward, completely erasing every movement in Asnerd, killing him instantly. And also it shoots upwards from herself, like this way, and where it ends, like the heat pushes out into this plume of like a tree, like the treetop, and it's like this giant white tree through that, and she just erases every heat in a giant area around her. which is basically the ability she has, but extended to a very wide area. So it's not her body, sword, and ribbon anymore. It's this area around her that's just completely frozen. And we know a bit of a spoiler, perhaps. It's not confirmed, really. No, it's not confirmed. It's not a spoiler. But there is in BBS, there is a fan animation, so to speak. I think it's done by Kubo, where she uses perfect Bankai, where in this form she can dance in the area and extend it in other directions, which is the refined form, I guess. So the dances complete then this pristine form she has. She also expresses that then in her movements, finally becoming whole, so to speak. And something I wanted to talk about as well is, why did Asnod not die from Shikai? Asnod did not die from Shikai, I think, because she just touched him. So yes, the heat was sucked away through the touch, but not completely, just on the surface. And her Bankai like froze an area, a volume, so every heat was just frozen from the Asnod's core as well, which is my headcanon why the Shikai didn't kill him, but the Bankai did. I would have actually loved to see Asnod use Ranzo Tengai to make himself move again, though, because he had severe frost burns on the surface, which is in line with what would happen. Yeah, I wanted to briefly talk about two things in the end, which is her relation to other Zanpakuto. There are two Zanpakuto that came to mind when I created this, like the basic outline for this video, and those are Senbon Sakura and Zanka no Tachi. Senbon Sakura came to mind because in a way Rukia's Bankai is an antithesis to that, because Senbon Sakura there is an area of safety around Byakuya and an area of destruction around that safety area, and for her it's inverted, at least in Shikai. Like, she herself is the dangerous area, and around her there is a more safe area. So it's like the inversion, and I really like this link to Byakuya's Shikai, or Bankai rather. And then there, of course, is that she is the counterpart to Zanka no Tachi. And I think in her perfect state, she would be like probably as powerful as Yamamoto when she really trains and has enough Breatsu perhaps, because Yamamoto is like creating heat everywhere, and she is like pushing away heat everywhere. And I would love to see a fight between the two. I hope we get it in hell. Fingers like thumbs pressed. I hope we do. But yeah, I just wanted to mention these two. And I really love that because again, it shows the relation and abilities between characters in a way. And of course, her abilities fit her perfectly. As I said, she is self-doubting, and so she's this cold individual. In Shikai, it's like this self-doubt a bit. I always think of Shikai as the surface personality and Bankai the true personality. And the more the Bankai develops, the more one accepts themselves, which is also what I think, personal hypothesis only, how the Bankai develop into more refined forms, like with self-acceptance. Like Yamamoto's probably developed as well, we know that pretty much. So he knew himself better or changed his character. His Bankai got more refined. So the Shikai is rather surface level stuff, I think. And so her surface personality is very cold, distant. She doesn't like herself that much or trust herself that much, being symbolized by the cold and her Bankai. Finally, she has that, yes, but she accepts it. She becomes beautiful, the beautiful person she like was to the outside a bit with her moves, but it wasn't like clear. Now you see it directly how beautiful she is, that she accepts herself. So that was the video. I hope you liked it a bit. Next will be Asnod, doing learning psychology with Asnod. Tell me what you thought about this video. Also, please share it around and like and subscribe and stuff and comment, because, as I said, it was a lot of work to do. So if you're interested how I do this, I basically write down some of the core ideas and then I just talk about what I think, which is like basically how my university lectures also go. So now you know a bit how I would lecture. But yeah, I really like this one. I really wanted to do this one as well. Basically, especially because of the quantum physics part, because that was so mind-blowing that it worked with the nerve superconducting. Like, he probably didn't know, but it works. It's so brilliant. He's such a brilliant man. I love Kubo. I love his style and design and everything around Bleach. I just love it so much. Anyway, with that, I hope you enjoyed this a bit, took something from it, and please please, yeah, share, subscribe, and stuff. Really, because I can't do that much content currently, so it helps a bit push the content I do have. So I don't know. Anyway, I still hope you have a very great day. And yeah, I will see you hopefully in the next video. So have a good one. Bye.